Hi, I'm Pam, and I would like to welcome you to the Live Authentically show. My team and I help other people step into their authentic realities a number of different ways through this podcast. I also have my first book out there. It's called Soar. It's behind me, and it's on Amazon. And it's an experiential journey through a transformative event in my life and shows how I partnered with the universe to create my new reality. I am also an executive coach, and I take executives to sky high levels of success in all areas of their life, personal and professional. So we have a great show planned today for you. Super excited to have Dr. Varun Gandhi with me. Hey, Dr. Gandhi.
Hey Pamela, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. How about you?
Doing fantastic. Thank you so much. Love and abundance, everyone.
Yeah, I love having you here. So I know we've got a great show. You're doing such amazing work in the world, and we're going to get to hear all about it today. But first, I'd like to start off with a question that I ask all of my guests, and that is, how do you live authentically every day?
That's a great question. The way I live authentically is I want to make sure that I'm expressing myself authentically. So I'm always paying attention to that. That's been a challenge for my life,
Mhm.
expressing myself authentically and making sure that I'm heard as well. So I want to make sure that every time I'm speaking something, that the words are actually true to what really care for. So anything that comes out of my mouth, I want to make sure that it's authentic. So I always have like that screen to make sure, okay, am I saying this authentically or am I saying it to please someone else?
Mm,
I think that's where I always have like a little filter
yeah,
coming out
I
of.
love that. So, what is the barometer for you to determine if you're truly being authentic and how you're expressing yourself?
I look at how I'm feeling. Is this coming from a place of scarcity or is it coming from a place of abundance? Because if it's
Hmm.
some people pleasing, then it's scarcity, and it's like,
Hmm.
oh, I'm looking to get something out of it, as opposed to, hey, it just is, and that's fine.
Hmm. Hmm. I love that. So let's dive into your story. Would love to talk to you about kind of your journey, and now that you're living in this authentic place, I'm curious if we can go back to a time when you weren't living authentically, and would love to hear about that, and then hear what was the catalyst to prompt you to make some changes in your life and embark on the authentic route.
Yeah. So my journey began. I have a PhD in environmental engineering, and so this is focused specifically on water treatment, like drinking water that comes in our house.
Okay.
So as I was graduating, I was kind of in this figuring out what I wanted to do. And the one thing that came up for me was like the only job offer that I got was at this consulting firm. So I took up that job. I was working there for about a year or so. And then during that time, I started having these pains in my solar plexus region, my stomach region.
Okay.
So about a year and a half into it, actually about a year into it, and then 3 months later, that the pain started off subtly, but 3 months later, it was bam, right in my face. Every morning, I'd wake up and it was there, and I couldn't ignore it. So up until this time, I was ignoring a lot of things that were going on in my life.
Mm-hmm.
This one I couldn't ignore, so
Mm-hmm.
I started kind of unconsciously. I didn't really know about this technique of asking questions to the pain, like what is the
Oh,
message that the pain is giving me. I didn't really
okay.
know about it, but I was asking these questions to the pain. And one answer that I got was, why are you waking up every morning, 8 a.m., going to this job from 8 to 5, uh, and something that you don't even care about that much? Like it doesn't feel like you're
Mm-hmm.
making much of a difference. And that was
Mm-hmm.
the key thing for me, is like I felt like there was something greater out there for me, not this job. This job wasn't it. And that kind of triggered this whole move away from the regular 9 to 5 job, and move into entrepreneurship. That was one of the catalysts. Now, going back a couple of years, this is a simultaneous journey along with my career. There was another thing that happened in my love life. And this was a relationship that had fallen apart. And this is right before I graduated, 6 months before graduation. The whole thing fell apart. And as I was graduating, I realized, okay, it's time for me to move, to go away from this place that I've known home and have all these memories where. And And so I said, you know what? I'm gonna take this job that was in Idaho. So I was in Atlanta at this time when I
Okay.
graduated. I went to Idaho. I didn't even
Hmm.
know Idaho existed until I took up that job and got the interview.
Hmm.
I go out there. That could like represent, the moment of going into the cave, into that darkness,
Hmm.
where I didn't know anyone in Idaho. I had no friends
Hmm.
whatsoever. It's completely brand new
Wow.
space.
Okay.
It was like a prime opportunity for me to really look at all of the pain and suffering that came up from that relationship.
Hmm.
The 3 months after I broke up, every morning I'd wake up with tears in my eyes because my reality was completely different from my dream world. I was still dreaming about all of those things that were going on in the past, but my
Yeah.
reality said something else.
Hmm.
So that kind of led me into spirituality.
Okay.
About a year and a half of just going through all of that pain and suffering, and then after that being tired of feeling like this, I said, you know what, enough is enough. I need to make a
Hmm.
change in my life. I don't want to feel like this anymore.
Yeah.
And that's when I picked up books by Deepak Chopra. The book was called The Book of Secrets, and
Okay.
this is a high level book. So at that time when I was reading it, like 95% of it went over my head. But
Mm.
the little bit that I did pick up was this word called meditation.
Hmm.
And then I started researching meditation. What is meditation? Googling it, learning more about it. And finally, about a couple months later, I picked up a practice of meditating every day. And it was that meditate, not every day, but trying to do it every day. But it was that practice of meditation that helped me really understand and realize that I create everything in my life. All of the miseries in my life is my doing. And I'm creating these stories in my head. And I have a way to change it if I want to, if I choose to. So it was up to me to commit and make that decision like, hey, it's time for me to make this change. So this is kind of a summary of what I went through and how I came to be here.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I'm curious, the relationship breakdown, that's something that I think we've all gone through at some point in our life. And I think there's tremendous opportunity for growth, even though they can be really challenging experiences. What is the main thing that you learned about yourself during that experience?
The main thing I learned about myself, I think, is that, and I think this applies to everyone, that the stories that are going on in our minds, we have power over those stories. What do I
Yeah.
mean by this? Every time we're trying to make sense of a situation, that's a story that we're creating around that situation. And
Mhm.
if another person looked at the same situation, they would come up with a totally different story based on their
Yeah.
own experiences, right? So, based on your perspective, you'll come up with a different story. And I realized, and going through 25 years of my life, I had no idea of this. I felt like everything that was just happening to me, I was drifting through life really, and everything that was happening to me was, I didn't have any control over it. And that's how I felt. I was just drifting through this life, and whatever came my way, I would take it, and just accept it as it is. I didn't want to put my willpower into it and make things happen for myself. And so that was one of the key things that I realized, that these stories are playing out in my mind, and these stories
Mhm.
came from my childhood. Things that happened from when I was a lot younger, when I didn't really
Mhm.
have control of things that I was observing and paying attention to. And so I had to sit down because 28 years of my life, I had never done any form of self introspection. I
Okay.
really had to slow down and sit down with myself. And so that space of meditation gave me this time and space to slow down my life and
Mhm.
really understand all of the things that have been happening in my life and how I have caused those things. So now I can play an active role in my own life and make sure that those things, like for example, one of the reasons I realized later on uh, was the reason for the breakup. One of the main reasons is that I was like in this mode of jealousy and had this, the male power, male dominance, and I felt like
Mhm.
if I didn't exert it, then I wasn't, a good person in the relationship. Kind of that's my thinking at that time. And so I had to really sit down, slow down, and understand all of this that was going on, so that I wouldn't carry this into my next relationship. And so I
Mhm.
do all of this work. And that was the thing that helped me uh, yeah, like realize that I had to make some changes in my life.
Hmm. And I love that, you've talked about this whole idea of stories, right? And the stories we tell ourselves that are largely driven by our prior experiences that go back to our childhood. We see the world through our own perspective and through our own lenses. And I think that's really important. I know that's one of the areas too that I work on personally is, if in the absence of information, I'll create my own story. And it generally, and oftentimes it doesn't really reflect what's actually happening in reality. And so I think we all have those tendencies to a certain degree. So I know you mentioned meditation. Are there any other approaches or modalities to help people to pause and create a story more consciously that involves like question asking or curiosity, things like that? I'm curious to hear other approaches.
Yeah, one approach I use is journaling, and writing down my thoughts, writing down anything that came up during the day, the night, so I do it at nighttime, and I review the whole day. I feel like
Mhm.
reviewing the day helps you, understand how we were at different points throughout the day. And if at times we were in scarcity mode, at times we were in abundant mode,
Mhm.
really, slow down and pay attention to those things.
Yeah.
So combining all of these tools, I've actually created something called the My Life film, and I'll give you an analogy of what this means. So we're in a movie theater, we're watching this movie on the screen,
Mhm.
screen the movie, and there's a projector in the back that's projecting this movie onto the screen. So projector and screen are tools. The projector consists of the film that
Mhm.
actually contains the essence of the movie, right? And this whole process, this whole mechanism goes on in our lives at every moment. There's a
Mhm.
projector called the third eye, our imagination, that's projecting all of these different images onto the various screens in our lives. The film that's inside of us is what the projector uses for data, and it creates all of the stories and images from that film, which is the past experiences, which is the traumas, our high points in our lives, the low points in our lives. All of that's contained in that film. And so now our projector takes all of this information, and every time it comes across a person, every time it comes across a situation, every time it comes across a place, we project all of these images onto those screens in our life. So, for
Mhm.
example, my mother, my father, my parents, they're all different screens, and my experience of them governs how I view them. And so, this process of really so then I created something called a life film, which is understanding what's in the film that's inside of you. So that is going
Okay.
back to ages when you were 0 to 9, to all of these different age groups, all the way up until today, and really
Mhm.
creating a full history of your positive experiences and your negative experiences, so that we can then parse out, okay, how did these experiences affect me and become and make me into who I am today? Because
Mhm.
once you can figure that out, then you understand, okay, this is my experience of that one incident that happened in the past. I can reframe my experience now in the present moment so that I look at
Mhm.
it differently. And instead of it just empowering me and taking me down, I can instead use it to empower me and take me, make me walk in the direction that I really want to go in. So this My
Mhm.
Life film and What's Your Story course will help people understand their stories, find ways to upgrade their past stories, and then help them create new stories for the future so they can manifest it in their lives.
Brilliant. So, what is the format of this? Is this like an online course or is this one-on-one coaching with you?
It's a combination of it. It starts off as an online course, and then if people want to dive deeper, then we could do the one-on-one coaching as well. If they get stuck at certain
Okay.
points, then we can definitely go into the one-on-one. But it's a
Mhm.
self-sufficient course that people have essentially all the information through the course, and I've created a tool using Excel where basically you can put in all of the information, your whole life film, you can create it on there.
Mhm.
That will help you have all this information up front. And as you're living your life, every year you can start updating the sheet. And this
Okay.
way they'll be able to kind of keep their life film up to date.
I love that. I love that idea. So, what are some other ways that you help people claim their authenticity?
Other ways that I help people is one thing is to pay attention to their self-talk.
Okay.
Especially so one situation that's been a challenge in my life is when I'm in these situations, getting interviewed by someone, right?
Hmm.
Camera, when people are
Yeah.
watching, expressing myself, right? And what I realized that has helped me is to repetitively put myself in these situations so that when I'm in that situation, I can actively program myself or reprogram myself.
Hmm.
What does that mean? So when I'm in the interview, so I have my own podcast where I interview folks as well. Either that or when I'm being interviewed on a podcast like yours, I would become completely aware in the present moment, especially
Okay.
when I am in the mode of fear. When I get into fearful mode, what happens is my conscious mind goes for a walk. It's like it's not there anymore. And all the
Hmm.
patterns from my subconscious, all of that will just start coming up, and I'll start sweating, and all of those like reactions will come out. So I've had to make a practice of keeping my conscious mind here in the
Okay.
moment so that it does not get afraid and just hide or walk away. Uh,
Hmm.
and while I'm doing that, and then I start paying attention to how am I feeling in this moment,
Hmm.
right? And my goal is to make sure that I'm at ease when I'm at during these interviews so that I can respond instead of reacting to any of the questions. I can really authentically share my true voice. And so this
Hmm.
tactic of reprogramming myself, especially in those hard situations when you're always, when you feel uncomfortable a lot of the times, I want to start feeling comfortable. And so that the
Yeah.
strongest work happens when I'm in the moment and making myself feel comfortable. I feel like that's a
Hmm.
great tactic for people to use.
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is super powerful. And, I wanted to expand on that a little bit too, is, you've said this twice now in the interview, referencing how you feel as a barometer, to how you're doing and how you want to show up in a situation. And that is absolutely key. I think when people start really tapping into how they feel on an intentional basis, physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, gaining that awareness, then they can do something about that. Because the whole idea is to get to a place of ease and grace and organicness and kind of get in that flow, right? Because when we're stressed and experiencing anxiety and we're frustrated and we're experiencing all of those lower vibrational emotions, like we're literally pinching ourselves off from everything that we truly want, which is up here. We're pinching ourselves off from the abundance and the benevolence of the universe. And I think that is the biggest aha moment I know for myself and for my clients, is that when they start tapping into how they feel, then they can start to make adjustments. And then that's when the magic starts to happen. Synchronicities abound. There's again more of an ease and an organicness, and life starts to become magical and starts to unfold in a way that they didn't even realize was possible. But that's the key, is paying attention to how you feel. And one thing I'd like to hear you talk a little bit more about, because I think this is super, super important, is just an awareness of the energetic body, the spiritual body. You mentioned early on that you were experiencing pain in your solar plexus. And I think it's really important for people to understand the interrelatedness of our physical body, our emotional body, mental body, spiritual body. And often, what we're experiencing physically is it's a physical manifestation or representation of what's going on energetically. And so the importance of acknowledging, again, that interrelatedness and why it's important. So would love to hear you just talk about just the connection between the energetic body and the physical body.
Yeah, it took me a long time to realize that.
Mm-hmm.
Through meditation that I was able to really slow down and pay attention to the subtle energies around me and within me. Uh,
Yeah.
like you said, they're all interconnected. So that pain in my solar plexus, I've actually, that was the second time I'd gotten that. So
Okay.
before I started my PhD, I was enrolled to do my master's, and between the summertime from my bachelor's to my master's, that those 3 months I took up a summer internship, and I wanted to gain some experience. And so I was working at this great job. I enjoyed it for the most part, But after about a couple months into it, I said, you know what, I see
Mhm.
myself doing this. I don't see myself in this career.
Mhm.
Lo and behold, so then I said, you know what, I'm going to stay in school longer and do my PhD. So instead of making a decision in a year after my master's, I'm going to kick that can down the road and make the decision 5 years later. I'll finish my
Mhm.
PhD. So stayed in school longer. And once I graduated, guess what? I end up in the same job that I said I wasn't going to go into during my summer internship. And so
Mhm.
it was that repetitive pattern. And then after a year and a half into that job, I started feeling these pains in my solar plexus. So I
Mhm.
hadn't picked up on the message that I already don't feel so great in that office environment, working on these numbers in an Excel sheet and things like that. I don't really feel
Mhm.
great, like I was fulfilling any purpose. And but it had to show up in that form of a pain in my solar plexus to really say, okay, now is the time to make the decision.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I would still be in that job. I would still be living that very comfortable life with all,
Yeah.
everything covered and everything taken care of. But I had to slow down, tune into my body. And then I realized since then that tuning into my body has given me a lot of information, right? So anytime
Mhm.
I eat something, I tune into my body. How is my body acting, behaving? What's my energy like? And
Yeah.
how did that food affect my body? Right. And that's
Mhm.
how I've been able to eliminate a lot of foods from my diet because,
Mhm.
hey, this food is causing me pain. Every time I've eaten it for the last 5 to 10 times, it's always caused me pain. So I don't
Mhm.
want to feel this pain anymore. It's time to move on and find a better option for food. And so tuning into my body is able to give me that insight into what's good for me, what's not good for me. I feel
Mhm.
like that can be applicable to any aspect in life. Any decision
Mhm.
that you're trying to make, tune into your body, listen to it. How does your body really feel? If your
Yeah.
body's telling you, "Oh, okay, this feels great. Let me go in this direction," even though your mind says, "Oh, that does not make sense," but your body
Mhm.
says, "Oh, it feels great. Let's do it." Right? And I've had to make those tough decisions. My mind is not caught up yet. It's like questioning, like, is this the right decision? Is it not? But my body's saying, no, it is. Let's just go do it. And later
Mhm.
on, a few months later, maybe a year later, I'll realize that, oh, that was a great decision. I'm glad I listened to my body as opposed to my mind.
Mhm.
Because my
Yeah.
mind is confused.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you heeded that early warning signal, because I believe that, the universe, it does, send us these little whispers. And if we're paying attention, if we're tuned in, tapped in, turned on to the energy, then we can do something about it. That's the whole idea here is to whatever it is, like catch it in earlier stages, right? That's why people end up in like burnout and overwhelm because they didn't pay attention to the little pings, the little, the signs, the pokes, the communications from the universe early on. When we're tapped into how we feel, then we can make those little micro adjustments, and we don't end up in that path of like catastrophizing or end up in that place of burnout or overwhelm. So I applaud you for having that self-awareness and catching that and adjusting and doing the necessary course correction so you could ultimately get on your path of fulfilling your life purpose.
Yeah, and it's like you mentioned about life purpose. It's also the same thing with depression, right? It's not catching the
Mhm.
signs early on
Yep.
when you're feeling sad. Then after years of sadness, you finally get depressed. But if you had caught that way early on, that okay, this thing is making me feel sad. I don't want to continue doing this. It's time to stop this pattern. If you stop it
Mhm.
right then and there, then you don't get to that point of depression. But
Yep.
if you allow it to happen and happen over time, then it's easy to get there. I feel
Mhm.
like that really is slowing down, paying attention to the body. And for me, meditation really, really helped me. So I keep going back to that to everyone that if you haven't picked up a meditation practice yet, a meditation ritual yet, please, please, please do that. And
Mhm.
I have tips on how to get started as well if you'd like to hear that.
Yeah, yeah, whatever you'd like to share. I was just going to say we have a couple minutes here before we wrap up, but I'd like to just give you the floor and you can share, information about anything else you'd like to. And in addition, would love to have you share your contact information if people would like to get in contact with you directly. So I'll
Sure.
hand it over to you.
Thank you, Pamela. So meditation, the way I started it was I was a self learner, self exploration. Like I'm a Sagittarius, we like to explore. And so I Googled it, started reading a lot about it. There's a lot of good stuff about out there. There's a lot of crap out there. Parsing out
Mhm.
all that information is a little difficult. So initially I would read and just practice. And so I would sit in the corner. At that time I was renting a one bedroom at a friend's place. So all of my belongings was in that room. So I would sit in the corner to tune out all of the belongings, everything behind me. I would face the corner. So that was one way to remove all of my distractions. And so then I'd sit down, meditate. I said, you know what? I'm going to start out doing it only for 5 minutes. I don't want to go longer than that. Is initially when we first sit down to meditate, it's a challenge. It's like going against the grain because you've never done this before.
Mhm.
So starting with 5 minutes, and that's the goal I set. And then so I would sit down to start meditating, and lo and behold, I always have this question: has it been 5 minutes yet? And so then I have to get out of my meditation practice, look at my phone, be like, oh, it's only been 30 seconds, and put the phone back and let's get to it again. So
Mhm.
to remove that thought process, I put a 5 minute alarm, a timer on my phone, and then I set my phone away. So now I don't even have that question. I know 5 minutes are going to be up. My phone's going to let me know. And then I would record my experience. So the first month I would do this. I didn't continue doing that throughout. But I would, going into my meditation practice, how do I feel? What are the thoughts that are going on in my mind? During my meditation, what happened? What thoughts came up? Did I hold on to certain thoughts? What was my experience like? And then after meditation, how do I feel? It's kind of an assessment of what is this doing to me, right? And in the first month, you probably won't see a lot of change. You're still trying to reach 5 minutes of meditation. To be
Mhm.
honest, it took me about 2 to 3 months to actually be able to do 5 minutes of meditation. It's a process, and you have to show
Yeah.
up every day, I think. So that's kind of how it's like a baby steps in meditation, and I feel
Mhm.
like taking those baby steps will help you finally run the marathon.
Mhm.
And that's what meditation is to run the marathon. So that's how I would recommend people is get started is start out small. And
Mhm.
as far as another thing that I'd like people to know is to drink water. So one of my titles right now, I called myself a water doctor, and my origins of the title was from the PhD because I have a focus in water engineering.
Yeah.
But now what I do it is I just remind people to drink enough water because there's a book that was written called Our Body's Many Cries for Water. And it
Mm.
says that about 40 to 50% of the diseases, common diseases that exist out there, like migraines and little things like that, if you drink enough water, all those diseases will go away. And
Wow.
yeah, all those pains will go away. There was a book, this book was written by a doctor who was thrown in jail in Iran. And through his experiences in the jail, he saw a lot of people laying, on the floor, no energy, having ulceritis, all these different pains. And he
Mhm.
just gave them water, and within 3 hours, they would completely be a whole new person.
Really
Yeah, just by a little bit of water, and they'll be a
wild.
whole new person in such a short period of time. So he
Okay.
realized that there's something important there. And
Mhm.
through his research after that, he found out that dehydration is one of the major causes of a lot of the diseases.
Okay.
Just drinking enough water will help us remove those diseases from our system. So, yeah,
Mhm.
just drink enough water.
Love
And
it.
tune into the body to, understand when you're dehydrated and make sure you're
Mhm.
drinking enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it.
And last thing, as far as the contact information, my website is drvarungandhi.com, and Instagram is the same name, Dr. Varun Gandhi.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I've so enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you, Pamela. I appreciate it. Love and abundance, everyone.
Thank you. And thank you to our viewers and listeners. I so appreciate you. And I hope you guys all have an amazing day. We'll chat soon. Bye.